My son, my only child, stood before me in his $1,000 tuxedo, his face a mask of cold embarrassment. He looked at the security guard, a man whose locker room I had probably cleaned just last week, and said the words that shattered my world into a million pieces. "She's not a guest. She's just my mother. She's a cleaner who gets confused sometimes. Make sure she doesn't come in." Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see you all again. I'm Grandma Beatrice. My full name is Beatrice Holloway. I am 71 years old, and I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, the kind of place where the lawns are neat and the secrets are even neater. This story is a heavy one. It's a stone I've carried in the pocket of my heart for almost 20 years. My other children, the ones who came into my life much later, know that my relationship with my eldest son, Ethan, they think it's just a clash of personalities, a quiet drifting apart that happens sometimes in families. They don't know the truth. They don't know about the day he tried to erase me. To tell this story feels like breaking a bone that healed wrong, setting it again so that I can finally, truly heal. It's a pain I have to walk through, not around. And I suppose, after all these years, I'm finally ready to do the walking. Before I take that first step, I would be so very grateful if you could do me the kindness of liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It's a small thing, I know, but every time you do, it sends a little signal out into the world that says, "We're listening, your story matters." And that signal gives me the courage to finally share a memory I've kept hidden in shame for far too long. To understand the depth of that day's betrayal, you have to understand the pride I came from. My story doesn't begin with shame. It begins with love and with the smell of soap and honest sweat. It begins with my husband, Arthur. Arthur was not a man of fancy words or grand ambitions. He was a plumber, and he was the finest plumber in the whole state of Illinois, as far as I was concerned. He took a profound, quiet pride in his work. He believed that there was a nobility in fixing what was broken, in making things work, in providing a service that people depended on. "There's no shame in any work done with honest hands, he used to tell me, his own hands calloused and nicked from his trade. The only shame is in looking down on the person doing it." He was the sturdiest, most honorable man I have ever known. His love was like his work, not flashy but solid, reliable, and deep. We built a life on that principle. We didn't have much money, but our little house was rich in love. And when our son, Ethan, was born, our world, which was already full, somehow overflowed. Oh, that boy. He was my sunshine. He had his father's steady hands and my talkative nature. He was a happy child, and he grew up seeing the dignity in the work his parents did. When he was little, he would trail behind me as I went to my own job. You see, after Ethan was born, I started cleaning houses. At first, it was just for a few neighbors, a way to bring in a little extra money while still being home for him when he got back from school. I never thought of it as demeaning. I thought of it as an act of love. I was creating order out of chaos. I was making homes feel peaceful and clean for families who were too busy to do it themselves. I took pride in it. I loved the smell of lemon polish and the sight of a floor scrubbed so clean it shone like a mirror. And Ethan, my little Ethan, he was proud of me too. He'd make me Mother's Day cards at school with crayon drawings of me holding a mop, wearing a crown. One year, he wrote, "To the Queen of Clean, my mom." My heart nearly burst. He wasn't ashamed of me. He saw my work for what it was, a manifestation of my love for him. He saw the sacrifice and the strength. Arthur and I taught him that value isn't in the title you hold, but in the integrity with which you hold it. We saved every penny we could. We didn't go on fancy vacations or buy new cars. Our dream was singular, to give Ethan the one thing we never had, a college education. We wanted him to have choices. We wanted him to be able to build any life he wanted, on the strong foundation we provided. And we did it. We got him through a good state university, all without him taking on a single dollar of debt. The day he graduated, Arthur and I held each other and cried. We had done it. Our life's work was complete. We had given our son the world. We just never imagined he would use that world to look down on ours. The shift began, as it so often does, when a new person entered the picture. Her name was Serafina. Ethan met her in his first job out of college at a big investment firm in downtown Chicago. He was a junior analyst, bright-eyed and eager. She was, in his words, a goddess. Serafina came from a world so different from ours, it might as well have been a foreign country. Her family had old money, the kind of money that doesn't have to announce itself, that lives in the quiet confidence of summer homes in Michigan, and generations of Ivy League educations. Her father was a senior partner at the firm. The first time Ethan brought her to our little house for dinner, I could feel the change in him already. He called me beforehand, his voice tense. "Mom, please, can you make sure the house is, really tidy? And maybe we could use the guest towels in the bathroom?" Nyan. My heart gave a little pang. I had kept a tidy house my entire life. It was my profession. The suggestion that it wasn't good enough, that it needed a special effort for this girl, was the first small cut. But I brushed it aside. He was just nervous, I told myself. He wanted to make a good impression. Serafina floated into our home like a queen, visiting the peasantry. She was exquisitely beautiful, dressed in clothes that were simple but screamed of expense. She looked around our living room, at the comfortable, worn furniture Arthur and I had saved for years to buy, and a tiny, almost imperceptible smile played on her lips. It was not a smile of warmth. It was a smile of amusement. "Oh, Ethan, your childhood home is so authentic," she said, her voice like wind chimes. It was the first of many backhanded compliments. She was a master of them. She refused to let me take her coat, instead draping it carefully over a chair, as if she were afraid it might be contaminated. When I shook her hand, her grip was limp and brief, and I saw her, a few moments later, subtly use a little bottle of hand sanitizer she produced from her purse. I felt my own hands, clean but calloused from a lifetime of work, curl into fists at my sides. Throughout the dinner, which I had spent 2 days preparing, she was the picture of polite interest. But her questions were less about getting to know me, and more like an interrogation for a sociological study. "So, Beatrice," she said, picking at her pot roast, "Ethan tells me you're in the sanitation industry." Sanitation industry. She made it sound like I collected garbage. "I'm a cleaner, dear," I said, my voice steady. "I own my own small business." "Oh, a business. How enterprising," she cooed, with a glance at Ethan that said, "Isn't that adorable?" My son, my proud, wonderful son, just sat there, squirming. He was a different person with her. He was quieter, more deferential. He laughed a little too loudly at her jokes. He seemed diminished. He was so desperate for her approval that he was willing to let her patronize his own mother. After that first meeting, the changes in Ethan accelerated. He started to see his own life, his own history, through her eyes. Our home wasn't cozy anymore. It was cramped. My cooking wasn't comforting. It was heavy. My life's work wasn't noble. It was a source of quiet, gnawing shame. He started trying to fix me. He'd bring me expensive scented hand creams, not as a gift, but as a project. "Mom, you have to take better care of your hands," he'd say, a line I was sure came directly from Serafina. He'd correct my grammar. He'd tell me the stories I'd told 1,000 times were a little repetitive. He was trying to sand down my rough edges, to make me smoother, more polished, more presentable for his new world. He was trying to make me into someone Serafina could approve of. Arthur, my wise, quiet Arthur, saw it all. "He's ashamed of us, Bea," he said one night, his voice heavy with a pain that broke my heart. "He's ashamed of the work that gave him the very life he's so proud of now." I denied it, of course. I defended him. I made excuses. "He's just in love, Arthur. He's trying to fit in. It will pass." But it didn't pass. It got worse. When they announced their engagement a year later, I felt a surge of pure, cold dread. I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that this wedding would be a battleground. And I knew, with an even more terrible certainty, that my son would not be fighting on my side. Serafina and her mother took over the wedding planning with the efficiency of a corporate merger. I was not consulted. I was informed. They chose a venue, the most exclusive, expensive country club in the Chicago suburbs. They hired a wedding planner from New York. They talked about budgets that made my head spin. And me? I was a ghost at the proceedings. My only role was to be the mother of the groom, a title that, I was beginning to learn, came with no power and no respect. I was a problem to be managed, a slightly embarrassing working-class relic that they had to figure out how to display, or, as it would turn out, how to hide. At first, the insults were subtle, wrapped in the silken ribbon of Serafina's polite condescension. They were death by 1,000 paper cuts. The wedding planning sessions, which I was occasionally invited to, were held at her parents' palatial home in Lake Forest. I would sit on a silk sofa that probably cost more than my car, a delicate china teacup trembling in my hand, feeling like an exhibit in a museum. Serafina's mother, a woman named Eleanor, who was as polished and cold as the marble in her foyer, would discuss floral arrangements and catering menus with an air of grave importance, as if planning a royal coronation. I remember one afternoon, I tried to offer a piece of our family, a piece of myself. "You know," I began, my voice sounding small in that cavernous room. "My Arthur, Ethan's father, he always used to say that a wedding isn't a wedding without a polka band. It's a silly tradition, but—" Eleanor didn't even look at me. She simply turned to Serafina and said, with a dismissive wave of her perfectly manicured hand, "Serafina, darling, remind me to tell the planner absolutely no novelty acts. We want elegance, not a village festival." Serafina gave me a tight, pitying smile. "It's a sweet thought, Beatrice, truly, but I think we're going with a classical string quartet for the cocktail hour." A novelty act, a village festival, that's what my husband's memory was reduced to. That's what our life, our joy, our traditions were to them. I felt a hot flush of shame creep up my neck, so intense it was almost dizzying. I looked to Ethan, my son, my only ally in that room, praying he would say something. Praying he would say, "My dad loved the polka. It would mean a lot to my mom." But he said nothing. He just shifted uncomfortably in his chair and took a sudden, intense interest in the pattern on his teacup. His silence was louder than their insults. It was an endorsement. It was an agreement. He was one of them now. From that day on, I stopped offering suggestions. I learned my place. I was to be a silent, smiling prop. But even my silence wasn't enough. They started to plan around me, to manage my presence as if I were a logistical problem. The first major blow, the one that truly knocked the wind out of me, was the matter of the family photos. The wedding planner, a severe woman with a clipboard and an air of utter disdain for anyone outside her tax bracket, was running through the schedule with us. "Now, for the pre-ceremony photographs," she announced, her voice brisk. "We will have the bride with her parents and siblings at 3:00 p.m., the groom with his parents and family at 3:15, then the full bridal party at 3:30. Eleanor cleared her throat. "Actually, Candace," she said, her voice smooth as cream, "we've made a small adjustment to the schedule. We've decided it would be more streamlined to have the groom's family photos taken after the ceremony during the cocktail hour." The planner looked confused for a moment. "After, but the light will be failing, and it will cut into the reception time." "It can't be helped," Eleanor said, her tone leaving no room for argument. She gave me a brief, cool glance. "It's just easier that way." I understood immediately. I felt the blood drain from my face. They didn't want me in the official wedding album. They didn't want the formal pre-ceremony pictures to include the groom's mother, the cleaner, the woman with the rough hands and the simple, off-the-rack dress. They were hiding me. They were scheduling my presence out of the most important, most permanent record of the day. The photos that would sit on their mantelpieces for the next 50 years would not have me in them. My heart felt like a lead weight in my chest. I couldn't breathe. I looked at Ethan, my eyes pleading with him. Please don't call. Say something. Don't let them do this. And now. He saw my look. And for a moment I saw a flicker of the boy I used to know. I saw a flash of shame, of guilt. His mouth opened as if to protest, but then he caught Seraphina's eye. She gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head, and his mouth closed. The moment was over. He chose her. Again. That sounds fine, he mumbled, his gaze fixed on the floor. Whatever is easiest for everyone. A cold, hard knot of anger began to form in my stomach. It was a feeling I wasn't used to. I wasn't an angry woman. I was a crier, a fixer, a peacemaker. But this feeling, this was different. This was the cold, quiet rage of being erased. Later that week, I tried to talk to Ethan alone. I had to understand. I invited him over to the house, our house, the one he grew up in. I made him his favorite coffee cake. Ethan, I started, my hands trembling as I set the plate in front of him. I need you to be honest with me. Why don't they want me in the wedding photos? He wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the coffee cake as if it held the secrets of the universe. Mom, you're being dramatic. It's not that you're not in the photos. It's just a scheduling thing. It's a very complicated day. Don't lie to me, Ethan, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Not about this. I'm your mother. I deserve the truth. He let out a long, frustrated sigh. The sigh of a man burdened by his unsophisticated mother. Look, he said, finally meeting my eyes. And what I saw there broke my heart. It wasn't just shame. It was pity. He pitied me. Seraphina's family. They're very particular about appearances. The wedding is going to be in a magazine, a society magazine. They just want everything to be cohesive, uniform, you know? Uniform? I repeated, the word tasting like poison. And I'm not uniform. Is that it? Because I clean houses for a living? Because my hands aren't soft? Because I don't wear designer clothes? He had the grace to look ashamed. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, I said, my voice finally cracking. Tears I had been holding back for months began to stream down my face. It's about my job, isn't it? The job that paid for your college education. The job that bought you the clothes on your back. The job that made it possible for you to even meet a girl like Seraphina in the first place. You're ashamed of me, Ethan. Just admit it. You're ashamed of your own mother. He just sat there, silent, his face a mask of misery. His silence was his confession. It was a profound, soul-crushing humiliation. My own son. My beautiful boy. The one I had sacrificed everything for. And he was ashamed of the very work that had fueled those sacrifices. Arthur's words came back to me, clear as a bell. He's ashamed of the work that gave him the very life he's so proud of now. My wise Arthur. He had been right all along. I thought that was the worst it could get. I thought being hidden from the photos was the rock bottom of their cruelty. Gosh, I was so naive. The real bottom was yet to come. As the wedding day approached, the snubs became more blatant, more cruel. I was not invited to the rehearsal dinner. The official excuse was that it was just for the bridal party, but I knew the truth. They didn't want me there. I was not invited to the bridal shower, hosted by Eleanor. I learned about it after the fact, when I saw the pictures on Seraphina's social media, a sea of elegant women in a beautiful garden, and not a single person there who would recognize the mother of the groom. With each new slight, the cold knot of anger in my stomach grew harder, heavier. It was no longer just anger. It was transforming into something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet. It was a quiet, waiting resolve. Then came the final conversation. The one that set the stage for the wedding day itself. It was 2 days before the wedding. Ethan came to my house alone. He looked pale and stressed, like a man walking to his own execution. He couldn't look me in the eye. He stood in my entryway, twisting a pair of leather gloves in his hands. Mom, he began, his voice low. We need to talk about the wedding day. Oh, I said, my voice dripping with an irony he didn't seem to notice. Am I still invited to that? Or has my invitation been rescheduled as well? He flinched. That's not funny, Mom. No, I said. It's not. He took a deep breath. Look, Serafina and her parents they're very stressed. A lot of very important people are going to be there. Clients of her father's. Investors. The governor, for God's sake. And they just want the day to go smoothly. Without any distractions. Yes. And I'm a distraction, I stated, my voice flat. He finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. It's just your job, Mom. People will ask what you do, and it could be awkward. For Serafina, for her family. Awkward, I repeated. The word felt like a physical blow. My life's work, my pride, my contribution to his very existence, was now officially classified as awkward. So, he continued, rushing now, the words tumbling out in a desperate, shameful torrent. We had an idea. A way to make it easier for everyone. Maybe it would be best if you didn't attend the ceremony or the reception. The room went silent. I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, the one Arthur had bought me for our 10th anniversary. Tick. Tock. Dot. Each tick was a nail being hammered into the coffin of the love I had for my son. You want to uninvite your own mother from your wedding? I whispered, my voice hoarse with disbelief. No, not uninvite, he said, his voice rising in panic. Of course not. We just thought you could come to the country club. You could be backstage, in one of the staff rooms. We'll bring you a plate of food. You could see me before I walk down the aisle. You could be there just quietly, in the background. That way you're a part of the day, but we avoid any uncomfortable questions. I stared at him. I stared at this stranger standing in my house, suggesting that I, his mother, should hide in a back room like a dirty secret while he gets married. That I should be grateful for a plate of leftovers from the party I was not good enough to attend. This was it, the moment of absolute clarity. The final, brutal, soul-shattering insult. He didn't just want to hide me in the photos. He wanted to hide me in life. He wanted me to be a ghost at my own son's wedding. A strange calm coldness washed over me. The anger, the hurt, the grief, it all receded, replaced by a vast, empty, and terrifyingly clear space. In that space, a decision was made. A plan began to form. It was a wild, audacious, and deeply satisfying plan. I looked at my son, at the weak, pitiful, shame-filled man he had become. And I did something he never expected. I smiled. It was a slow, serene smile. You know what, Ethan? I said, my voice suddenly warm and kind. You're right. That's a wonderful idea. It will be so much less stressful for me that way. Thank you for being so thoughtful. The relief that flooded his face was so absolute, so pathetic, that it almost made me laugh. He was so desperate to believe the lie, so eager to be let off the hook. Oh, Mom, thank you, he said, grabbing my hands. Thank you for understanding. I knew you would. You're the best. Of course, dear, I said, patting his hand. Now, you run along. You have a big day ahead of you. Don't you worry about me. I'll be there, quietly, in the background. I wouldn't miss it for the world. He kissed my cheek and practically fled my house, a man freed from his prison of guilt. He had no idea he had just walked straight into a different kind of trap. A trap that I was now, with a chilling sense of purpose, carefully and meticulously setting. He thought he had managed the problem of his embarrassing mother. He had no idea. The problem of his embarrassing mother was just getting started. The moment the front door closed behind him, the warm, understanding smile fell from my face. I walked over to the window and watched my son, this stranger who wore my son's face, get into his expensive car and drive away, back to his shiny, hollow life. I didn't cry. The capacity for tears had been burned out of me, replaced by something cold and hard and clear as diamond. Hiding in a staff room. Avoid uncomfortable questions. He had asked me to voluntarily erase myself from the most important day of his life to protect the delicate sensibilities of his new, wealthy family. He had handed me my official job title for the wedding, a non-person, an inconvenience, a ghost. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break. It was forged. All the hurt, the shame, and the quiet humiliation of the past 2 years melted away in the white-hot fire of my rage. And what was left was not the soft, pliable woman who had always made excuses for him. What was left was Beatrice Holloway, a woman who had scrubbed floors on her hands and knees for 30 years, not just for her son, but for her own pride. A woman who had been taught by her husband that there is dignity in all honest work. A woman who was about to teach her son a lesson he would never, ever forget. He wanted me to be a cleaner at his wedding. Find a Tyree. I would be a cleaner at his wedding, but I would be the most visible, most unforgettable cleaner anyone had ever seen. The next 48 hours were a blur of meticulous, purposeful activity. The sadness was gone, replaced by a crystalline, focused energy I hadn't felt in years. I was a woman on a mission. First, I went to my closet. I looked at the simple, beige dress I had bought for the wedding, a respectable, mother-of-the-groom dress designed to fade into the background. I took it down, folded it neatly, and buried it in the back of my closet. It was the uniform of a woman who had accepted her invisibility. I would not be wearing it. Instead, I pulled out the uniform I wore every single day. My work clothes. A simple, sturdy pair of gray overalls, a faded blue work shirt, and my comfortable, worn-out work shoes. This was my armor. This was the truth of who I was. This was the uniform of the woman who had paid for the very tuxedo my son would be wearing. Next, I went to my office, the small, spare bedroom where I kept the books for my little cleaning business. For years, I had kept a secret I had never even told Arthur, and certainly not Ethan. I hadn't just been cleaning houses. I had been investing. For 20 years, a small portion of my earnings, a little bit from every house I cleaned, had been quietly funneled into a mutual fund. I had studied the market, read the books, made smart, conservative choices. My little mop money, as Ethan had once jokingly called it, had grown. It had grown into a sum that would shock them all to their core. It was my independence, my power, and I had never touched a penny of it. Until now. I called my broker. I had a long, very specific conversation. I gave him instructions for a transaction to take place at precisely 2:00 p.m. on Saturday, the day of the wedding. Then, I gathered my props. I went to the garage and found my old industrial-sized mop bucket and wringer. I polished the chrome until it gleamed. I took out a brand-new mop head, clean and white. I found a bright yellow wet floor sign. This was not just cleaning equipment. This was my regalia, my scepter and orb. Finally, I sat down and I wrote a check. A cashier's check from my personal savings. It was for an amount that was both generous and deeply, exquisitely insulting. I placed it in a simple white envelope. On the front, I wrote 2 words, HC for services rendered. The morning of the wedding, I did not feel nervous. I felt a profound, almost spiritual, calm. This was not an act of revenge. It was an act of reclamation. I was reclaiming my dignity, my history, and the value of my own life. I was about to clean the biggest mess I had ever seen, my son's appalling ingratitude. I put on my work uniform. I loaded my gleaming mop bucket, my sign, and my other props into the back of my old reliable station wagon. And I drove to the most exclusive country club in Chicago. I didn't go to the main entrance. Oh no. I followed Ethan's instructions perfectly. I went to the back, to the service entrance, where the delivery trucks and the staff came and went. A harried-looking catering manager saw me and my bucket, and just waved me in, assuming I was part of the cleanup crew. I knew the layout of places like this. I had cleaned 100 of them. I knew where the staff rooms were. I knew where the back hallways led. I found an empty utility closet, tucked my props inside, and I waited. I could hear the sounds of the wedding beginning, the faint, elegant strains of the string quartet, the murmur of the well-heeled guests. I sat on an overturned bucket in the dim light of the closet, a queen on her throne, and I waited for my moment. Ethan had told me to find him before he walked down the aisle. So, at the appointed time, I made my way through the labyrinth of back hallways to the groom's private staging room. I knocked on the door. He opened it, already dressed in his perfect tuxedo. He looked handsome, but his eyes were filled with a nervous, hunted look. When he saw me, standing there in my work overalls, a wave of pure, undiluted relief washed over his face. I was following the plan. I was being the good, quiet, hidden mother. "Mom," he whispered, pulling me into the room. "You're here. Good. Thank you. Thank you for doing this." "Of course, dear," I said, my voice full of a warmth that was pure performance. "I wouldn't miss it. You look so handsome." I straightened his bow tie. I looked him in the eye. "I am so proud of the man you've become." The lie didn't even make me flinch. I let him believe everything was fine. I let him walk out of that room and down the aisle to marry his goddess, secure in the knowledge that his embarrassing mother was safely tucked away in the shadows. I did not stay in the shadows. The moment the ceremony was over, my own performance began. I retrieved my mop and bucket. I filled the bucket with clean, soapy water, and I began to work. I started in the grand marble foyer, right where the guests would be exiting the ceremony to head into the cocktail hour. I put down my bright yellow wet floor sign. I dipped my mop into the bucket, wrung it out with a loud, satisfying creaking, and began to mop the floor with long, steady, expert strokes. I was not a ghost. I was a physical presence, a woman at work. The first guests to emerge were Seraphina's parents, Eleanor, and her husband. They were laughing with the governor. They saw me, a woman in overalls mopping the floor, and they did what people of their class have always done with people of my class. They looked right through me. I was invisible. I was part of the scenery. But then, more guests began to pour out, and they started to notice. A low murmur went through the crowd. Who was this woman, mopping the floor with such grim determination in the middle of a $100,000 wedding? I saw Seraphina and Ethan come out, their faces wreathed in newlywed smiles. Seraphina's smile faltered first. She saw the mop, the bucket, the sign. She saw me. A look of pure, horrified confusion crossed her face. Then Ethan saw me. The color drained from his face. It was a moment of slow-motion horror. His eyes widened. His jaw went slack. He understood immediately. This was not part of the plan. He started walking towards me, his steps quick and furious, a panicked hiss of "Mom" on his lips. But he was too late. I had an audience now. I chose my moment perfectly. As a large group of what were clearly his colleagues from the investment firm walked by, I leaned on my mop, looked up with the tired, friendly face of a hard-working woman, and said in a voice loud enough for them all to hear, "Excuse me, folks, just cleaning up a little spill here. Don't want anyone to slip on the big day. Don't want anyone to slip on the big day." One of Ethan's friends, a young man I recognized from a photo, laughed. "Wow, Ethan, they've got your mom working on your wedding day? That's rough." The friend thought he was making a joke. He had no idea how true it was. Ethan froze. The blood rushed back to his face in a furious, mottled tide of shame. He was caught, exposed, in front of his friends, his colleagues, his new in-laws. His carefully constructed world of sophistication and success was being threatened by the simple, undeniable presence of his mother with a mop. He finally reached me, his eyes blazing with a desperate, silent fury. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my flesh. "What are you doing?" he hissed, his voice a low, venomous whisper. "You are humiliating me." I looked up at him, my face a mask of placid innocence. "Humiliating you? Ethan, I'm doing exactly what you asked me to do. You said you were ashamed of my job. You said you wanted me to be here quietly, in the background. Well, this is my job. And this is the background. I'm just being the cleaner you've always seen me as. Nows. I pulled my arm free from his grasp. I looked him dead in the eye, and the smile I gave him was pure, cold steel. You wanted me to hide, I said, my voice dropping so only he could hear. You were ashamed of the woman who scrubbed floors to give you a life, so I decided to show everyone exactly who that woman is. Let them see the work you find so awkward. Let them see the mother you tried to put in a closet. And then I turned away from him. I dipped my mop back in the bucket. I had made my point. The bomb had been detonated. But I wasn't finished. This was only Act 1. Act 2 was about to begin, and it was going to be so much worse for him than this. The fight back wasn't just about showing up. It was about showing him, and everyone else, the true meaning of value. The cocktail hour was a masterpiece of social chaos, orchestrated by me, a woman in overall. I didn't stop my work. I continued to mop, slowly and methodically, making my way from the foyer towards the grand ballroom, where the reception was to be held. I was an unavoidable spectacle, a piece of performance art they were all forced to witness. The guests didn't know what to do. They tried to ignore me, to sip their champagne and make small talk, but their eyes kept darting in my direction. The air was thick with whispered questions. I could see Serafina across the room, her face a pale, frozen mask of fury, trying to pretend nothing was wrong. Her mother, Eleanor, was shooting daggers at me with her eyes, but she was too well bred to make a public scene. Ethan was a ghost. He drifted through the crowd, his smile plastered on, but his eyes were wide with a hunted, desperate terror. He looked like a man watching his own life burn to the ground, helpless to stop the flames. Every time he looked at me, I would just give him a small, cheerful, professional nod, as if we were colleagues. The true masterstroke, however, was yet to come. As the guests began to move into the ballroom for dinner, I knew my time for mopping was over. I calmly packed up my bucket and sign, wheeled them back to the utility closet, and disappeared into the back hallways. I emerged a few minutes later, not as a cleaner, but as a guest. Underneath my work overalls, I had been wearing a simple but elegant black dress. I had shed my work shoes for a pair of smart, low heels. I let my hair down from its bun. I walked out of the ladies' room, a completely transformed woman. I entered the ballroom just as the wedding planner was frantically trying to get everyone seated. I saw Ethan and Serafina at the head table, sitting on what looked like 2 golden thrones. I walked directly towards them. My son saw me coming, and for a moment, a flicker of hope crossed his face. Maybe he thought I had come to my senses. Maybe he thought I was there to apologize, to fade away as he had wished. I didn't even look at him. I walked straight up to Serafina. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a cold, silent loathing. Serafina, I said, my voice clear and pleasant, loud enough for the entire head table to hear. I just wanted to say congratulations. I do hope you have a wonderful evening. And then I reached into my purse and took out the simple white envelope, the one with the cashier's check inside. I placed it on the table in front of her, right next to her gold-rimmed charger plate. Her name was not on it. His name was not on it. The words on the front were stark and clear. Why, for services rendered. I believe this is for you, I said. Consider it a wedding gift. A little something to compensate you for the extreme awkwardness and humiliation of having a cleaner for a mother-in-law. No. She stared at the envelope as if it were a scorpion. She didn't touch it. Ethan finally found his voice. Mom, what is this? What are you doing? He pleaded, his voice cracking. I'm just delivering my final payment, dear, I said, still smiling sweetly. I believe I have fulfilled my duties for the day. But I wasn't done. I turned to the man sitting next to Serafina, her father, a man who radiated power and wealth. I extended my hand. You must be Mr. Davenport, I said. I'm Beatrice Holloway, Ethan's mother. It's a pleasure to finally be properly introduced. Nyan. He looked at me, his eyes sharp and assessing. He had seen the entire spectacle in the foyer. He knew something was deeply wrong. He shook my hand, his grip firm. "Ma'am," he said, his voice neutral. "I just have one question for you, sir," I continued, my voice ringing with a newfound confidence. "I'm just a humble cleaner, so I don't know much about the world of finance you and my son work in. But could you tell me, is it a good investment to raise a son who, on the most important day of his life, is willing to hide his own mother in a closet because he's ashamed of the honest work that paid for his education?" "No." The entire table fell silent. The string quartet seemed to falter. Mr. Davenport's face hardened. He looked from me to Ethan, whose face was now ashen, and then to his own daughter, who looked like she was about to be physically ill. And then, at precisely 2:00 p.m., my broker made the call. Ethan's phone, which was sitting on the table, buzzed. Then, Serafina's phone buzzed. Then her father's. A news alert. From a major financial newswire. Mr. Davenport picked up his phone. He read the alert, and his eyes widened in disbelief. He read it again. He looked up, not at Ethan, but at me. And for the first time, I saw a flicker of something that looked like respect, or maybe fear. Anonymous benefactor donates entire Holloway Industries stock portfolio to national charity for single mothers. He read aloud, his voice a stunned monotone. Ethan snatched his phone. He stared at the screen, his mouth agape. Holloway Industries was the cleaning supply conglomerate I had invested in decades ago. It was the cornerstone of my secret portfolio. It was worth millions. He looked at me, his eyes wild with a horrified, dawning comprehension. That was you, he whispered. You had millions? All this time? I gave him a serene smile. It was just a little mop money I'd put aside, dear. I never had much use for it. But I thought it was time to put it to work, for women who, unlike me, might not have the strength to stand up for themselves. Women who sacrifice everything for their children and get nothing but shame in return. I looked at Serafina. I looked at her perfect dress, her perfect hair, the perfect extravagant party she had planned. The party that was built on the foundation of my shame. You see, I said to my son, my voice now soft, but carrying across the silent table. You were ashamed of being the son of a cleaner. I wonder, how does it feel to be the son of a philanthropist? Is that more cohesive? Is that less awkward? I didn't wait for an answer. I had said everything I needed to say. I turned, my head held high, and I walked out of that ballroom. I didn't look back. I could feel the weight of their stares on me, but they didn't matter anymore. I had walked in that day as a cleaner, a ghost, a problem to be managed. I was walking out as Beatrice Holloway, a woman of means, a woman of power, but most importantly, a woman who had reclaimed her own dignity. I heard later, through the grapevine, that the marriage didn't last a year. The foundation of their relationship, it turned out, was not love, but ambition and appearance. And I had shattered that appearance into a million pieces. Ethan's career at his father-in-law's firm came to an abrupt end. Humiliating your boss's daughter in front of the governor is generally considered a bad career move. He tried to contact me, of course. Dozens of times. He left pleading messages. He sent letters. But I never responded. The son I had raised, the little boy who drew me pictures with a crown on my head, was gone. And the man who had taken his place was a stranger to me. The lesson in all of this is a simple one, but one I had to learn the hard way. It's the lesson my Arthur tried to teach me all those years ago. There is no shame in any honest work. The only shame is in being ashamed. The only shame is in looking down on the hands that scrubbed the floors so you could reach for the stars. Your worth is not determined by the job you do. It is determined by the integrity, the pride, and the love you bring to it. Never, ever let anyone make you feel small for the work you do, especially when that work is an act of love. Thank you all for letting me finally clean out that last dusty corner of my heart. It feels so much lighter now. If this story gave you a little bit of strength, I would be so honored If you would like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories, please don't forget to ring that notification bell. The greatest gift we can give each other is the knowledge that we are not alone. So if you feel moved to, please share your own stories of strength and dignity in the comments below. Love you all. This is Grandma Beatrice, and I'll see you in the next story.